I feel like this is going to be fire. We're sure we're good on here?
That one's good.
All right.
Just make sure we're not like
The Elephant Man.
God.
Did you hear that in any of the other stuff?
Barely.
Okay. All right, welcome back. It is episode 2 of Built by Vitality. I am Steve Pinkerton. I am sitting next to my man
Philip Lewis.
Philip Lewis. We recorded last week, and I almost felt bad when I finished. I'm a very sarcastic person, and I don't think I fully laid out how amazing you are at media. I kind of poke some fun about you only understanding like 50% of it type of thing.
That I had a Nick Jr. podcast and stuff.
Yeah.
I've listened to it over and over this weekend.
So just so you know, I lost about 13 minutes of sleep over that. So I want to make sure the viewers and listeners understand that this dude is super talented. I'm just impossible to work for. So no matter what he does, he'll never fulfill my expectations.
Okay, great. That's good though. That keeps me,
Yeah.
striving to learn more. So that's good.
So today's episode, we're going to talk about what I think is the most instrumental factor in being successful, not just in business, but life in general. I know it's kind of a broad statement, but I think there's so much emphasis put on, work ethic and discipline and all these other traits. I think one that's undervalued to me is being able to control our emotions. And I would refer to that, I like to call that emotional discipline. And that's what I want to talk about today, both how that applies to both business and situations outside of business in your everyday life. I think that emotional discipline is something that we all can strive to be better at. Me personally, this has been a 15-year journey about trying to fix this. I was very high-strung. I had a very bad temper, and it's just there was really when you boil it down, you peel back the layers. All that says is it showcases my immaturity, and so I'll talk a little bit about why I think this is the way it is, and how we can put some tools in place and some things in place to help us from making these mistakes. I heard a quote. I heard it back in the Marine Corps, and I've seen it on TV shows or whatever, but it talks about no one is stronger or more dangerous than a man in control of his emotions. And that's so true, because to me, if you look at a number of things, emotional control will determine the result of pretty much any problem, situation, encounter that you have. How you're able to control and manage those emotions will directly result in what happens. So why do I think this is important? And why do I spend more time on this with my kids than pretty much any other lesson? Because I think for me, I didn't even start to be aware of this until I was almost 30. So imagine if I was 20 and I didn't have to. Maybe I wouldn't have had it under control, but I would have recognized it was a problem and could have started working on it 10 years earlier. And that's what I'm trying to get with my kids is, look, I'm not, and when I talk about emotional discipline, I'm not talking about crying. I have no problem. Like, I'm not going to cry.
I'm not going to cry either.
I mean, Philip might cry if he watches,
No.
maybe if he watches
a dog video
In
or
Pursuit of
something.
Happiness or something, The
Yep.
Pursuit of Happiness
Me and
with Spencer. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about not crying. I'm talking about the end of the spectrum, two ends of the spectrum, being overly excitable, getting angry at a drop of a hat, or
I got some stories on that.
I see. So, and I think everybody can, but then there's a flip side of that is kind of moping around and letting that, the same emotional discipline where you get overexcited to where you allow it to affect your life on, a borderline depressive state to where, you're having a bad day and you kind of mope around and, everybody knows something's wrong, but you're kind of walking on eggshells. Nobody wants to be around that person. So that's why I think this is so important. And, when you start looking at emotional discipline, it's tied to decision-making skills too. I mean, how many times, Philip, when you say you've got these examples, but how many times when you found yourself very irritated, very excited about something in a negative way, did you make good decisions or bad decisions when you're
99.9% of the time, very bad decisions.
And that's the case for everybody.
And usually it only affected myself.
Yep. It didn't. Did it fix anything? Did it help anything? All it did is make it worse. And I think that is, again, I come back to my kids. I try and explain to, a situation can be bad, but it can easily get worse if you don't stop the bleeding and just say, okay, you know what? I'm going to think. I'm going to close my mouth. I'm going to open my ears for a second. And, it's fun in the Marine Corps, and I don't want to tell Marine Corps stories every podcast. So this is going to be the part where you have to keep me on track. But they would yell, they would yell ears. And when they yelled ears, all of us would yell open. And what that meant was obviously our mouth was shut and our ears were open, and they'd say eyeballs, and we'd yell snap, and we'd look at whoever was yelling eyeballs. And it's such a simple thing. But, if as a kid, if I could just teach my 12-year-old to stop talking back to me and just live with the consequences of the first time she made a mistake, her life would be so much easier instead of letting her mouth go. And now instead of just, an hour or two of a problem, now we're talking days or weeks of a problem. So that's why I think the military for me was just the beginning stepping stones of trying to teach me some of this emotional maturity and emotional discipline.
I don't think I had the Marines or anything like that to teach me. I learned it myself.
By making mistakes.
Yes, by making mistakes, and it always made it worse for me. And finally I got to the point as I got older, I was like, man, if I would just look at this different, not get as mad, treat it differently, I would not basically screw myself.
Yep. And I think when you look at, if you look at the most stressful situations that you can find, let's pick two real world examples. I would call it the military and law enforcement folks. And I'm not leaving anybody out. I'm just picking those two just because I was in the military and my brothers are both cops. So I've got a lot of experience in both of those, talking to those two fields. In the military, the entire training is built around teaching Marines how to deal with those stressful situations and manage those situations and be able to make decisions in those situations. So everything we did was to prepare us for that stress. That nonstop training was the only way that they could try and recreate some of that stress that was going to happen to us. And the same thing goes for the police officers. I would say that the most stressful situation I can imagine is being a police officer and walking up behind a car at 1 o'clock in the morning, and you can't see in the car, you can't see how many people are in the car, and you're walking up completely exposed to whatever situation you're walking up on.
Knowing that backup's probably, I don't know, 15 minutes away.
At least. So if we don't have the ability to manage our emotions in that situation, then we are going to make bad decisions. And look, now, I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but now, police officers are under the microscope more than any other profession on the planet. So we get to see every time a police officer makes a bad decision, we get to see it. But what we don't see are the 99.9% of the times they make amazing decisions that most people could never dream of figuring out. They do on a daily basis, but yet the highlight that we see, the highlight reel, is that 1% of the mistakes that are made. And that, in my opinion, comes from a lack of emotional discipline. It's a lack of training that leads to an inability to control my emotions. So Those are, the military and the police. But then you can look at more of a sports now, not life threatening, but now you look at sports and you can look at what are our kids being exposed to as far as emotional maturity. And what we see is the constant whining and complaining and the fighting, the sore losers, and the lack of humility. That's what we see, and that's what that's what gets the most clicks. For example, I saw this this morning about Ray Lewis and London Fletcher. London Fletcher played for the Redskins, I believe. He was a middle linebacker for 19 seasons or 18 seasons. Never missed a game. Never missed a game. Okay, and they had him side by side with Ray Lewis. And Ray Lewis, as everybody knows, is a bad man. That guy was an animal, right?
It's the golfer, right?
Yeah, Philip is our resident. He's not super up to speed on sports history, so feel free to make fun of him on that. But Ray Lewis was this guy that went to all these Pro Bowls. He was in a Hall of Famer, and London Fletcher had almost identical stats to Ray Lewis. But because Ray Lewis, they could market him on TV as this, he was the guy dancing before the teams were announced, the rosters were getting announced. He was the guy that, was the loudest in the field.
He was hype. He was showing off. He was.
And I get it. Someone's going to say, well, his enthusiasm and his emotions were what made him so great. Fine, I get that. But here's the problem. In my mind, I don't think you can turn it on and turn it off. So if you're going to be like that on the field, I would imagine driving with him, maybe some road rage. Maybe he was easily
going out to
irritated.
dinner or something,
Yep.
hanging out with him, going for some drinks, probably the same thing.
And look, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know Ray Lewis, but I'm just saying I think I can make the connection that it's very difficult to turn this on and to turn it off. If you don't have the emotional discipline in one area of your life, it's very difficult for me to believe that you have it somewhere else. So that's why I just wanted to make some parallels to the military and the police on the business side. And then you look at the sports side. You can give me any example, and I will show you how this can affect you. And I'll go one further. From the business perspective, I'll share with you a situation that happened to me a few times, but I'll share with you one specific situation where I was on the receiving end of an email that was written, obviously when someone was not in control of their emotions. So if you rewind this 5 or 6 years, we were getting ready to build Vitality, and I was going out trying to find some tenants. And one of my members at the time had said, "Hey, I would love to rent some space from you." I said, "Great." We kind of talked through some options and just made some general ideas of what it would look like. And then as we got further along, they kind of said, "Hey, you know what? I'm not quite ready. I don't know if I want to attach myself to a fitness facility yet." And I had no problems with it. I said, "Hey, cool. I totally understand. If something changes, let me know. I'd love to have you, but whatever." And it was great. There was no hard feelings whatsoever. And about 8 months went by, and then I started to fill up this building with potential tenants, and we were signing leases, and I was posting them on social media or whatever. And I posted a social media post about one of these tenants, and I got an email from this individual, and it was an extremely aggressive email that basically said, that questioned my integrity and my business practices, how much she lost respect for me because of how I handled the situation with not letting her be a part of this facility. And it was really odd to me because when I read it, I couldn't even make the connection of what had made her so upset. So I responded. I said, "Hey, let's just sit down. Let's chat about this. Obviously there's some misunderstanding here. But what I also did was I took the email chain that we had for the past whatever year and a half, and I attached that to the email I sent, and it just showed the last email that she had sent, and I had recapped saying, hey, I'm sorry this couldn't work out. I totally understand that you don't want to be attached to a fitness facility right now. I'm going to go out and I'm going to try and market this to some other people, but if something changes, let me know. And I sent that off, and she immediately replied within 5 minutes and said, I'm really sorry. I read through the email chain. I shouldn't have wrote the email the way that I did, whatever. And I said, great, let's talk tomorrow, whatever. So she comes in, and we sat down and we talked about it, and she felt terrible. And what happened was she was having a bad day, I'm sure. Some things weren't going her way. I posted a picture about a tenant that I had locked in that was in the same business field as her, and she immediately let her emotions get the best of her and fired off this email before she actually logically approached it and looked back and said, okay, well, maybe what's his angle on this? What's the view he's taking? And it changed the relationship that I had forever. Now, sure, I forgave her. I said, hey, look, I get it. We all do things that we regret. But what people don't understand is when you fire off an email, you can't take that back.
No.
That is there forever. And the things that you say in those emails, you can't take back. So that is where I feel the biggest lapse in judgment is being used right now. Is these are emails. Everything we do is through email. Very rarely do you pick up the phone and call anybody anymore. And it becomes very difficult to deal with some of those situations because if you're in a bad mood, it's amazing how you go from typing 40 words a minute to 80 words a minute.
Yeah. So it's either email or text, and it's recorded. It's there.
And if Philip sends me an email, I don't know I don't know the tone that he's using. He might just be in a really a quick email and send it out, and it might sound to me something different. And
Because he's in a bad mood, and I really wasn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that just one example is, and trust me when I tell you, I've been on the other side of that plenty of times where I've realized the mistake that I've made, and I've had to live with those consequences of sending the email that I shouldn't have sent because I wasn't mature enough to deal with my emotions and handle that in a professional way. And in business, as an entrepreneur especially, it is all about relationships. Everything in your business is built on relationships, and you'll spend years building those relationships, and one email can change that. So it's not like when Philip has a problem with me, 6-7 years ago, I'm sure we would have talked on the phone, or he would have came to my office and we would have talked about it. That's how things got handled. And then the confrontation is much different in person, face to face, not because of intimidation or because someone's scared. It's just harder to be rude to somebody when you're looking at them in the face.
And you can see their emotion. You can see how they're feeling. You can't really see that through text or email.
Yep.
You don't know if they're being smart to you, if they're condescending. You don't know what they mean through text.
And you can burn those bridges with one bad decision. And I think that's on as I try and relate this to the last 11 years of running Vitality, it is 100% a people business, a relationship business. And are there times I've been upset and I wish I could have conveyed a message in a way that wasn't as professional as I did? Yes, all the time that happens. But you have to have the emotional maturity to sit back and what I would recommend anybody that's listening, if you're in a bad mood or you're emotionally anxious, do not send an email. Save it in your inbox and look at it that night or the next morning, or have someone like I do that I can send something to and I can say, hey, here's what I'm thinking about sending out. What do you think? And
if possible, I'd wait and try to get them on the phone so they can hear your voice, or meet them in person.
Yeah.
But if you're in a business where you're dealing with a customer or somebody you have a relationship that's out of state, out of your town, that's a drive, you got to fly there, then like Steve said, you need to have somebody review that. Take some time before you send that out.
And you just got to have this, you got to have a system in place that protects you. And there are things, I think meditation is something I haven't gotten into, but I think that is, for some people, that could be a way to manage some of that anxiety and some of that that stress that we deal with. For me, working out is what allows me to deal with some of that stress, because having emotional discipline is also about trying to deal with some of those stressful situations you deal with every day. And if you don't have an outlet for that, that's how you start becoming an alcoholic. That's how you start becoming addicted to pills or some medications or drugs or whatever it is. They're looking for an outlet to help manage the stress or the anxiety or the emotions that they're dealing with. So I think that is the biggest predicator of success to me, is not so much what your emotional maturity is right now, but how much of a priority is it to you to get better at that. If you show me someone that's truly working at it, then that person to me is going to be successful, because they recognize that emotion, that emotional discipline is probably what's going to keep them from achieving whatever it is that they're going to achieve. And I think, as even on a parent side, I look at this as an opportunity in almost every scenario to teach our kids how to deal with this. Let's talk about loss for a minute. Over the years, we've had pets. I love animals just as much as the next guy does. Well, okay, maybe I don't get as attached to animals as Philip does. So, 30-second side story. Philip comes to me and says, "Hey, I got some things I'm trying to pay off. I got this surgery that I got to pay for my dog, who's 38 years old. How old is Roxy?
She is 7 years old.
7 years old, and she has a double ACL surgery. Okay.
Actually, she needs both of them done. She's only had one done. The other one's kind of healed with
What
scar
kind of
tissue.
dog gets a double ACL? I mean, what
The
is
vet
she?
said it's common.
What is she playing in the dog Olympics? So anyway, yeah, but
It was
so I
only
digress.
$3,800.
38 each.
Ugh.
So here's the thing. No matter how much you love animals, what happens is, if we don't teach kids how to deal with this loss of an animal, what we end up with is the example I'll use. I mean, you're talking about parents, kids. It'll be a 4 to 6 day or longer grieving period, to where, it's like the world has come to an end when their pet dies. And again, do not think I'm being callous about a pet dying. I am absolutely not. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is, if that is how we're going to deal with the loss of an animal, that is setting the stage for how our kids and how we are going to deal with loss later on, or disappointment later on in life. And I promise you, that loss of life in an animal will be peanuts compared to a parent, a sibling, a friend. There are a number of scenarios that will be much more stressful. So all I'm saying is, be cognizant of how we are approaching these emotional situations and how we're teaching our kids to deal with it. And I don't have the answers. I'm not telling you that, this is how I deal with, my dog dying. No, our dog died when my Reagan was 6 or 7 years old. She had a tough time with it. And, I said, look, there's going to be other times that are going to be much tougher than this. So you got a day. We got a day to grieve. And that's the Marine Corps coming out of me. No matter what kind of day we had in the Marine Corps, you had a day. Feel sorry for yourself for a day, but when you wake up the next morning, it's time to go to work. And I can't let something outside of work affect me, especially in the military, but even in your day-to-day life. I can't have Philip moping around in here because there are other people that are counting on you and counting on him to be able to perform a service or whatever it is that he does for his job, that people count on him. And I think that that's something that we can teach our kids, that look, bad things happen. It's nobody's fault. And we have to figure out a way to compartmentalize that, deal with it, and then move on. It doesn't mean you can't be sad. It doesn't mean we can't cry. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, heaven forbid, when Roxy dies in 10 years or 12 years, I get it. It'll be a tough.
I'm gonna need a moment.
See, there you go. It'll be tough, but at the end of the day, you got to look back and you have to frame your mind. If I'm Philip, I'm saying, you know what? I'm going to reframe and say, gosh, I had 17 years, amazing years with this dog. He taught me a lot, or she taught me a lot. Right. I had a lot of fun with it. And you know what? I'm going to remember those positive thoughts. If you let yourself start to go down this negative, this depressive state, it's only going to get worse. And what do you feel, Philip, like when you see someone that is kind of down in the dumps, moping around, does that give you energy, or does that kind of pull you down?
Sometimes when I'm in this office and Spencer walks in, he had a bad workout or something is off, I'll look at him and say, Spencer, don't bring that negative stuff in this office because I'm feeling good today and I don't want you to bring me down. So it affects who's around you. Just like if you're coaching a class here at the gym, if I'm in a bad mood, I'm moping around, something happened, I'll let it affect me. It's going to affect the whole dynamics of that class, the people in it, the way it flows, and the members are going to feel that. So
and think about the trickle-down effect.
Yes.
Think about the trickle-down effect of your class of 16 people.
If they already had a bad day and they come in, and then I treat them a certain way because I'm having a bad day, when they leave, they're going to probably feel the same as when they got here or worse. I shouldn't even came to the gym today. And then they're going to treat their family a certain way or their friends.
So now you're talking
the whole day.
16 people. Let's say they have close relationship at that in the evening with 3 each. Now you're talking about 48 people that are all going to be affected because of the way Philip ran his class. Versus, you know what? Philip had a bad day. Something bad happened, but you know what? When he got to work, he decided that he wasn't going to bring it with him, and he was gonna have a great day at work. Now he provides this amazing class for his group of people, and now they go home and positively impact. They had a terrible day, and let's be honest. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon or evening, most people are not having the greatest day.
No.
They're just not. And when they come to the gym or whatever it is they go, someone needs to be responsible for, you know what, let's snap out of it. Let's provide them a great experience so that when they go home, they feel great. They're excited. They're happy. Nobody wants to have their spouse walk in the door and throw their stuff down and be in a bad mood. Nobody wants that. And you don't want to surround yourself with people like that. You will not find people that want to be around you if you are negative. And we've had that, as a business owner, we've all had coworkers, we've all had employees that, they bring it with them, and you kind of find yourself walking on eggshells, like, gosh, they're in a bad mood today. Now what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Now I'm afraid I don't want to joke around, because it just becomes this black cloud that follows people around. So, I think when you look at this, very rarely can you find a trait that really, trickles down from your professional business setting to your personal life to all areas. And I think this emotional maturity, this discipline that we can show with our emotions can be something that we can strive to improve on. Nobody has it figured out. I don't care who you are. Nobody's got it figured out.
I had a buddy that I worked with. He's been married for, I think he said 29 years almost. And I said, how have y'all been together? How's it worked? He said, man, there's been plenty of days I've had bad days. He said, but he's gotten to a routine. He'll have a terrible day at work or whatever it is. When he gets home, he says, I'll sit in my car for 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is. He said, my wife might not even know that I'm there. He said, I'll put on some positive music. He said, right when I go in the house, I'll beeline to the restroom to splash some water on my face, and I try to just forget about everything that I just dealt with that day because I'm going to take it out on her, and it's going to cause our relationship to have problems, or the rest of the night's going to be terrible.
Yep. And I think that that's a strategy. You know, that's his strategy to work through this. And I would try anything. Whatever you want to try it. But you've got to be able to shift that frame of mind, and you can't bring that stress into that next scenario. So if you had a bad morning, then when I get to work, you know what? Hey, I'm gonna lock it up, and we're gonna have a great day. Only you can control that. Nobody else. But however, you can control it by putting positive people around you. You can surround yourself with people like I have. I have amazing coworkers that I love being around. I laugh all the time. It's almost impossible to be in a bad mood here at the gym. So you build your environment. You create the culture, and you start by controlling your emotions. And I hope that this sheds some light on just why I think it's so important. And I think that everyone should strive to have that emotional discipline in their life. So with that, episode 2 completed. I hope you guys enjoy the audio. For those that are watching, enjoy the video. And we will talk to you guys soon. Have an amazing day.